Hey everybody, thank you so much for your patience. We're starting a little bit late. Tiffany is actually doing the 12-day program this week. So like she has reports, she's seen patients, a meeting, all the things have been happening. And what's super cute is I'm deciding that this is our winter edition because we got snow this week and Tiffany is in a beanie. So I like the whole theming of this. I'm feeling it. So Tiffany, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself for anybody who might not know? This is the program that we do at least twice a month that talks about Dr. McDougall's Starch solution. Just so you guys know, questions that are outside of that scope may not be addressed. Okay, Tiffany, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday, January 14th. I am Tiffany Hobson, Vice President of Operations at Dr. McDougall Health and Medical Center. Coming up in the early part of March, I will have been working there for about 24 years. So I've been with the McDougalls for a very long time. You know what? I work there. I eat this way. And, I just love helping people. So I hope you bring your questions, and I'm happy that you're here.
That's awesome. So we have a few people here. We don't have any questions yet, but I'm sure we will soon. So you guys go ahead and put your questions over in the comments or the chat. If you're not on the chat, I don't think you can be in the chat on your TV, but you can on your phone or your computer. So hopefully we'll see you there. That the beanie with the big pom-pom is the cutest thing ever.
I wish I could wear a beanie. I want to wear a beanie so bad, but I can't.
Why can't you wear a beanie?
It's not flattering. It's not that I don't think they're flattering on other people.
I don't know if it's just because my hair is so short.
I think it's...
And my face is so round.
I'm not sure I do well.
Get extensions. Get a beanie and just get like some little like wig that you would just wear just so it comes down.
Just for the beanie. Oh, that's...
Why not, right?
Oh, that's hilarious. But yeah, no, she looks a little disturbing. And
well, I have lost weight since the last time I tried a beanie, so
I'm skeptical. Here's why. So let me give you the whole situation too. So Cheryl will often come out and be like, "Can I wear this out?" And I'm like, "Why are you asking me? I don't care." So I literally don't care if she wears a torn t-shirt and dirty sweatpants and we go out and do something. This is the only thing I've ever told her to go back and change in 20 years.
Yep.
So lest it sound like I'm just being mean to Cheryl. Cheryl wears all kinds of hats and she looks great.
It sounded like a mother when you came out with the midriff top to go out on a Friday night in high school, that kind of no. So it was a very no, you are not wearing that.
Right. Yeah, I was like, yeah, let's don't do that.
I'm very pasty white, and also the color beanie that I had on was not very flattering.
Again, spray tan. You guys need to come out to California. Obviously, right?
I'm like, my purple hair comes with a conditioner that takes 3 minutes. I'm like super low maintenance. But Hocus Pocus says you can explain it forever, but really we just need to see her in a beanie to assess and understand. I don't know if there's one around. If you want to run and get one, you're welcome.
You know what though? I'm not for that. We have to self-edit sometimes. So if that's true,
I would encourage her not to, but Betsy says, I see an avalanche of beanies coming your way in the mail. That's funny.
Yeah, I just, I do have a Minion one that was kind of okay. But
it's a Minion one. Let's just start there. So the bar is a lot different. Justine says, same, I can't wear hats either. All right. So we're going to move on from the Cheryl and hat and beanie topic for the day. We'll save that for a special episode, maybe. First off, Tiffany, Beth says, thank you so much for that year of support after the 12-day program. The program absolutely changed my life, and you were such an important part of that journey. And that's Beth F. If that
Yeah,
gives
I know
you,
Beth. I love you,
okay.
Beth. No, she is fantastic. And, a part of my helping her was the fact that she was actually very open into receiving and coming to me with questions, and especially coming to me when she would have moments of struggling or, I'm not really sure about this or that, because there is a lot of different opinions out there, and I'm just very straightforward. I gave her mine. I explained to her why. She listened to what I said, and it worked. So, Beth, you did all the work. I just got to hang out, and I had the pleasure of getting to know you and help you. So for me, that was really awesome. Thank you.
Amazing. And there is a question from Mary. She says, are there any limits on starch, potatoes, rice, beans we eat at each meal with veggies? So I think we're starting kind of from this very maybe even what is the starch solution? How do I do the starch solution? And what should my plate look like?
Yeah, hold on a second.
Absolutely.
So I've been up since 3 a.m. and I don't know if I can show you. Do you guys see that? Right before I got on was the first time I ate all day, and that was just at about 10 a.m. In here, I have rice and beans, and I threw in some frozen broccoli. That was cooked in the microwave. That's about it. You know what? I don't really tend to think about how much, but because number one, if you're not satiated, oh, it's not going to be good for you in an hour or two. I want you to be satiated, and this is why starches are so important. Rice and beans are absolutely fabulous. As you can see, rice, beans, broccoli, rice, beans, salad from a bag. You don't even have to reinvent the wheel, or any other frozen vegetable or vegetable that you want to put in there. I think that just the most important part, especially in the beginning, is just getting the routine down of having, your starches, having some vegetables, because vegetables are good. Now, of course, if you want to lose weight, and when you first start eating this way, you're going to drop weight. That's easy. But there's a point where you're a plateau. So the question is, well, what do we want to do? Do we want to mess around with the ratios of starch to vegetable? And if I actually do that, and that's making sure that they're not eating nut seeds or avocados or dried fruit or dried cereals, cookies, crackers, rice cakes, because all of those are higher in calorie density, and calorie density is different than the calorie count that you see on a package. But if they're doing all of that, they've been doing it, and they're finally at one of their final plateaus, I never go below a 50-50 plate of starch and vegetable. And the reason being is because that's when people start to get really hungry and starving. But it doesn't mean that you have to go 50-50 overnight. If you've been primarily eyeballing it and most of your plate was starch and maybe you had 10% veg, I say, okay, well then just increase it by 20% and take out 20% of starch, and let's go from there. So, it depends on where you're at, what your health goals are, but I'm huge into starches. I mean, I can't tell you how many times a day, when I first get hungry, I usually just eat potatoes. And I don't kill myself trying to go find vegetables to have with the potatoes. I just have potatoes. And then I move on with my day. So, I mean, even if all you have is rice, which I have done that. I have had rice and thrown in a little bit of sambal oelek in it just to get a little bit of heat, a little bit of flavor, and move on with my day. I've done that as well. So don't overthink it, just as long as you're being nourished and you are eating when you're hungry, satiation is there when you're done eating, you repeat as necessary. Those are the most important things to remember.
So you were very clear on what you said, so I'm going to ask a couple of follow-up questions, because when she's saying any limits on starch, and I agree with you, you also very clearly mentioned it depends on your goals. If your goal is releasing weight or maintaining that weight, that might change, right? So if I notice that I'm not able to lose any more weight, I'm eating on program, right? So first thing, like you said, look at nuts, seeds, avocados, things that are more calorie dense than just the basics that we usually eat. Because what's so interesting sometimes is all the messages from everywhere else. And we did talk about this with Tiffany Stacy last week.
Tracy.
I'm sorry. Stacy last week as well, is that, and I've said this a couple of times in the past couple of months, is that when things get really hard and it gets confusing, it's usually because we're listening to multiple sources and voices at the same time, which is fine if you are at your goal weight and you're healthy and you're tweaking, although it makes me a little bit crazy. I'm at none of those, but still, what I find is when people come and ask us Starch Solution questions, it's usually versus like somebody else's program. They're also, well, what about this from someone else's program? So, Mary, first thing I'd say, are you following the Starch Solution? You know, and then I like what you're saying too, to bringing this hunger back into it, satiation, because with this being the new year and some people trying this for the very first time, maybe even talk about why the goal is satiation too, why the goal is to feel nourished.
Well, satiation is different than feeling full to stuffed. And that's what most people feel. And another, way to look at a plate isn't necessarily how much starch or veg should I have, but, for example, if you lose 30 pounds, I'm going to tell you right now, you do not need to eat as much food in one setting as you did 30 pounds ago. But your body's used to you eating X amount of food. So you have to start looking at, well, how can I realize how much do I need versus how much do I want or I'm used to? And that takes a little bit of time. So if you're used to eating 2 plates of food, eat 1 plate and take a break. And really look at a time, like how long did it take you until you got hungry again? Because you can always go back to food. You cannot, once the food's in, it's just there. And if you are overeating, even if you're eating a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables, no oil, and none of the fake vegan products, you can still maintain and gain by having too much food. And there are people that actually gain weight because they're so sodium sensitive and they don't even realize it. And they're getting sodium bombs left and right from the condiments that are in their house. So, to me, it's always very specific on what's going on with the person. And I think satiation, that was a hard thing for me to learn. And I can tell you right now, I have a 10-year-old daughter. My dream goal for her, I have already accomplished at her age. She knows when she's hungry. She will tell me when she needs a break, so that means that she's satiated. And then when she's hungry again, she'll go back to eating. And it's hard because sometimes, I'm, especially with the family, we're sitting there. She says, I'd like to take a break. And my husband will look at her bowl or plate and say, you have 2 bites left. And I'm right there with her. I say, you know what? 2 bites, big deal. I don't care if I throw it away. I don't care if I put it in the refrigerator. But it's because we are so programmed and used to how we grew up. That's what we heard when we were growing up from our parents or grandparents. Oh, you only have a few more bites. Go ahead and finish it. The Clean Plate Club. And it's not about that. That's about not being wasteful. And especially if you had relatives that grew up during World War I, World War II, in times of utter, famine. These are things that, don't waste your food, but at the same time, you don't need to put that much food on your plate. And we are very lucky in this day and age. We have something called refrigeration. And we could put our food back into the refrigerator and we can warm it up later or eat it cold later if we want more food. So, I think that when it comes to satiation, how you want to feel, the best way I can describe this is if you have ever done yoga and when you are finished with doing all your kriyas, you are in shavasana, relaxing at the end. You are in a state of bliss. You're not hungry. You're not thirsty. You're just there. And that's what satiation's like. It's like, I don't need food. I'm not thinking of food. Now, sometimes you think of food because it tasted really good, and you might want more because it tasted good. But if we stripped that away from you, that layer, and just had you on, do you need food or are you satiated? Then you know, oh yeah, no, I'm good right now. And that's very traditional of European households. That whole thing about saving room for dessert, that's real. I grew up in a European households, and with my different family members, and that was always the thing: is don't take more food than you need if you want dessert, because once you put it on your plate, even if you put it in the refrigerator, there's nothing else you're going to eat until that plate is gone. you know and at least my one set of grandparents were more forgiving and more in this line of thinking of, you don't have to eat it, but you're not throwing it away, and you're not eating anything else until it's gone. So it also taught us to be very choosy in how much food are we putting on our plate. How hungry are we? That was the only time that I ever really thought about, yeah, how hungry am I, and can I eat all of this? Does that help?
Yeah, definitely. And, I came from a family where both of my grandmothers, that was one of the ways that they chose to really show love to all the grandkids, was to like feed them constantly. And and she would make everybody's favorite every time. Like it was not like just like, this is the meal we're having today. It would be, this person likes this and this person likes this. And at Christmas time, everybody had a different cookie that they liked, and everybody had their own bag of cookies that she made for them to their specific, like one kid liked more chocolate chips than another kid, and one liked nuts and chocolate chips, and she did this for everybody. And, and she was also very big on, you don't touch those until you clean your plate, kind of thing. And then, and when you're at a holiday or something like that, your eyes are always bigger than your stomach, and you always take too much. But then you're like feeling like now you got to clean that plate, kind of thing. So it's nice to see that mentality is kind of going away for a lot of the younger folks.
Yes, and not only that, but it's funny, but when I watch football, because I'm a huge football fan, as is my husband, we don't eat. There is no sporting event that I will watch. Football, hockey, baseball I always go in and out of. I could play it. I could be there at the game, but on TV, it's got to be riveting for me to really be into it the whole 9 innings. But the thing is that I don't eat because I'm not concentrated on, am I hungry? Am I satiated? No, I'm not. I am not at all. As a matter of fact, was not very happy this past Sunday for a bit. But what do you do when you have your team play horrible? There's nothing. They just lose. You move on. But I'm still not going to eat, just because I'm sad by the team, or, oh, it's upsetting. It's like, if my head's in football, that's where it's at. If my head is on food, then I'm going to think about eating. When I'm working from my computer, I do not eat. I have to like step away and eat away or have a few bites. Like, for me to have like my food here and have a few bites, then I took my bowl and I put it away from me because I don't need it here. The only things I have here, like I have green tea today. It's from Costco. It's fabulous. And with a little matcha, and I have good old sparkling water. That I'll have near me at all times. But food, to me, I think that we need to be more present so that we can really assess if we are hungry or not.
It's interesting that I went to a hockey game earlier this year, and it's just like some people that, like the people that sat next to us, every time they're at the end of a period, they would get up and they would go get some other food and drinks and bring it back. Like constantly, it was like during the game they were discussing what they were going to get at the next break, and I was just kind of like, and Rob and I were just sitting there like, wow, like, there is absolutely nothing here that we can eat, so we're actually enjoying this game.
Absolutely. But I hope you had potatoes in the car, because by the time you get out of a game
You're
and you
so
get to your
hungry.
car and you're just sitting there in traffic, hunger can hit you at the craziest times of the day.
Well, one of the things I've been keeping for me, she doesn't like these
I
as
don't like.
much, are those cooked dehydrated sweet potatoes. They are obviously more calorie dense than if I had just eaten one out of the microwave, but they are less calorie dense than my emergency date or two that I was carrying around with me. So then that's always nice. I keep them in both cars because if you can't get to a Wendy's when we're traveling a lot, I'm traveling with them. It's not that you can't travel with something else. And in the car, we always have a little bit of balsamic. We have some different salt-free seasonings. So
Some mustard.
we could go to Wendy's and grab a potato. So are there other ideas that you think about as far as like bringing things along with you or having some emergency food in the car?
I love potatoes. I love creamer potatoes, literally something you could pop into your mouth. Apples are great. Kind of like carrots. It's like out of the vegetables and fruits, they're the two that are hearty. That are they going to satisfy your hunger? They can. I mean, if you're not starving, yeah, they'll at least tide you over until needed. So I like that because I like simple finger food. I don't have any dehydrated, like I don't have like dehydrated potatoes or anything like that to eat. I don't do dried fruit. If I buy dried fruit, it's usually a very specific reason, like, oh, I'm going to make my husband oatmeal bars for his work. It has to be specific. It's not just because I want them because it's a quick snack. I really try to hone in on having real food with me and also knowing my outs. Like, okay, Wendy's, you can get baked potatoes there. Sometimes Wendy's, though, they're not always stocked with baked potatoes, and that's disheartening when that happens. Is there a steakhouse around? Steakhouses always have baked potatoes. They do. And I have gone and I have ordered like 15 at a time. And when they look at me, because I'm not ordering them, of course, with, hey, I don't want any oil or butter on them. I just want straight up plain baked potatoes. I just smile and either tell them that I'm really craving baked potatoes right now and I don't feel like baking them, which everybody gets in that mode. Or I say, hey, I'm descended upon a ton of people at my house and I need a ton of baked potatoes now. Okay, that's fine. It's really funny how you could just give a quick excuse and nobody really thinks twice of it. But I'll do that. Any Asian restaurant usually has steamed white rice. And is white rice as good as brown rice? Nope, it is not. Is it better than McDonald's? Absolutely. So, sometimes you have to like think about the areas you're going into, like sandwiches. I don't tend to eat sandwiches. I have to it's like an actual event, and I don't even remember the last time I've had a sandwich, to be honest with you. But when I do, I know that I want to have it with like particular items. And if you're going on a huge road trip and you're going to be gone for 10 hours and there's nothing on the road that's going to be good, well, guess what? It's better to have a sandwich because now you have food and it's still finger food. So I think about that as well. Even burger joints. Burger joints will look at you strange, but you can go into them, unless they flat out tell you that they will not do this for you. You can still get the bun. You can have it dry grilled, and then you can ask for Dijon mustard. I personally am boring. I just want a ton of lettuce, a ton of fresh tomato. I'm good. And I'll order that. And it's like, it's like a burger sandwich type of a deal. And usually they look at me and say no meat. And I look and go, yeah, no, I'm not feeling it today. No, that's all I want is lettuce and tomatoes. And I've done that. I've done that at, what's that place called? Not In and Out. There's another Habit Burger. They're kind of, I don't know how big they are, but in our area, there's different Habit Burgers here and there. I've done that when I've gone with like people and they're like, oh, I'm hungry and you want something. And it's funny because my order takes longer because it's so simple. Or if they don't have Dijon mustard, I just say, hey, you got ketchup? So I just don't make a big deal about it. So what I'm always thinking about is if I'm going on a road trip or if I'm going out to the post office, I already start thinking, what are the other things or stores in the area that I might want to go to if I have extra time? Like, do I want to go to a spice shop that's over there? Might I want to go here or there? Because the more time I add to my trip, the longer I'm away from home, the hungrier I may be unless I eat right before I leave the house.
That makes sense for sure. And we've done sandwiches before. Like I made a chickpea salad. And so when we were traveling long distances in the car, we always have a cooler. We have a few different things as well. Tried to have everything prepared. And a lot of times I will cook overnight oatmeal and put it in thermoses. So that's ready when we're going too, which is really, it's really nice because I don't know if any of you guys have tried to get oatmeal out, like when you're like, oh, now I really want my oatmeal. And you're like given this tiny spoonful of oats for like $4. And I'm like, never again. But it's, again, it's still better than alternatives if that's what you've got. But if you can plan a little bit. And going back to sandwiches, Jackie says, what's a healthy flatbread choice? I know that when we were in the program, Mary mentioned actual veggie burgers, which we love, and Ezekiel buns, which can be hard to get. So we have them in the freezer. We buy them during the summer. But so what do you think a healthy flatbread choice would be? And maybe even other bread choices or tortilla choices?
Well, you have to first read the ingredients, not just look at the calories, the fat, look at that after, but look at the ingredients. If the ingredients have oil, put it back. There are flatbreads out there that have no oil that are really McDougall approved. I would have to go online. Like if I went online right now, I could tell you the actual brand of them. But what I do is like if I make falafels, the thing with having falafels and a pita is that the pita is only so big. And by the time I put in, the falafel, and if I do a little bit of lettuce and I'm trying to get some more vegetable in, it's really difficult because what you end up eating is more falafel and bread than having a more of an even amount of vegetables. So what I like to do is deconstruct it. So if I'm making falafels, I will put it in a bowl that has lettuce in there and different steamed vegetables, and I'll do a cucumber salsa, throw in the falafels. Then I take the bread and I'll open it up and I tear it in half and I'll tear it in a quarter and I just put pieces in because I'm still getting the bread. It's kind of like I will make a little bit of tahini sauce. I'll put a hint of it in there, but I'm getting more of the vegetable content in my falafel than I am the actual bread. So that's how I like to do things. So it just depends on your area. And, remember, Amazon, there are places that do deliver, but read the ingredients. If you see a word, you don't know what that means, that is not a thing for you to buy. Like you should be able to read anything. Corn tortillas, mi ranchilla. You could buy them from Costco for those of you that have Costco. Costco is kind of like, I think, a Sam's Club. But when I buy them from there, I get 30 and they're bigger than what I could get at a store. So I just leave them in my freezer. And when I need some, I take some out and put them back in the freezer and I put them in the fridge and I just use them as needed. I don't make tortilla chips all the time. Sometimes I do. And when I do them, I just keep the corn all whole, put some water on it. And then I just put it either in a toaster oven or my regular oven at about 375. And the first batch is the longest for that to get crispy. And once the oven has been going, then if you do more batches, it comes through faster. I put them in a Ziploc bag and I date it and I use it like when needed. So I don't use them just to sit down and make guacamole and have chips and salsa and guacamole. If I make chili, I love taking some of that corn tortilla that's crispy and putting it in my chili for a little different texture. Sometimes my daughter wants chips and salsa and she's 10. So it's like, there you go, have fun. So little things like that help. But again, if you are struggling with maintaining your weight, having flatbread might not be the best decision for you at this moment. So again, you're going to get an answer, and then you're going to get the levels of different possible answers.
Of course. And everyone's come to expect that. They understand it's an individual thing. Two things. First, like one of the things that I love to do is make a big pot of chili and then make taco salads. And we make we get the extra thin, Thin-Credible tortillas, because that even has a better crunch. Put that in the air fryer for a little bit and crunch a few on top. Like, you don't even need that much, but once it's in there, it feels just as
that texture
fun
really
and
comes
decadent.
out.
Like a lot of times I find myself craving something crunchy, so that's really nice as well. Or sometimes also I will crisp up some chickpeas, not to eat a bowl of them, but to put them on top of a bowl or top of a salad instead of croutons.
Yeah, I really like that.
And sometimes I do that with potatoes.
Yeah.
Jane Bowser is saying, Atoria makes a great oil-free flatbread with minimal ingredients. I haven't had it before or seen it. She likes the whole wheat, and Amazon has it. So if you feel like you're doing well and you're really just looking for a healthy flatbread, I would check that one out for sure. And a couple more questions, but that was really clear. And from Stacy and you, everyone realizes it depends on your goals, right? Like if you're super skinny and you're looking to get your cholesterol down, you might have different needs than someone who's heavy and trying to release some of that weight.
Exactly.
Right? My Crafty Adventure says, I have chronic fatigue syndrome and can no longer do many of the things I love. Food brings me joy. It's so hard for me to give it up. So what kind of advice would you maybe have from maybe a mindset or something?
Yeah, so I am not a therapist, nor am I a psychologist. That said, the one thing that I do tell my daughter as well, food is not a reward. And we have been programmed to think it's a reward. Oh, you did something great, let's go out to eat, or this and that. Food is just a vehicle because, we have our bodies and they are highly efficient machines, and we need fuel in order to continue living. Because if you don't put fuel in it, it's no different than gas in a car. It will stop working. So with that, I always tell my patients who have very specific, like, tendencies to have like this dessert because they did this, or when they're setting themselves up with those rewards, I like to remind people that a really great reward is something you would not normally spend your money on, whether it's a spa day, whether it's some expensive soil that you would never purchase for your roses, whether it's a handbag from Chanel. I don't care what it is. But as long as you don't put it in your mouth, to me, that's more of a reward that you're giving yourself, like you're working towards something. When you use food as it becomes more of a comfort zone, and it's no different than alcoholics utilizing alcohol for that, or drug addicts using their drugs. So we talk about addiction a lot when it comes to alcohol and drugs. And we started talking about food addiction, I'd say more so in mainstream in the last 10 to 20 years. I mean, there is Overeaters Anonymous, and there's other faculties out there. But the question is, well, why are you doing this? Some people do this because something happened to them when they were 13. These are usually what I find are really rooted in something very specific that should be dealt with. And I am not the person to do that. If I did have a therapy license, then I would be. But I am really invested in people getting the absolute best care that they can. So don't just go to anybody. To me, the best therapist, psychologist, that's somebody that you can bare your soul to, that you feel comfortable, you feel safe with. And it might take you 32 therapists to go through before you find that. But when you do, that's when you're going to really open up and get some really good work done with yourself.
That makes perfect sense. And I think it is a lot of different things like that you have to think about. And you work with so many different kinds of people in what you do all the time.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing all that with us. Mary says, I'm hungrier when I exercise. Might eating more be slowing or sabotaging my weight loss when I exercise?
No. Yeah, there's a difference. When I exercise, like I don't like to eat before I exercise, or if I'm not going to exercise until later in the day, like today's a later in the day exercise day, then I know that I can eat up until a certain point, but I really want my stomach to be emptied as much as possible. But after I exercise, it depends on what I do. When I used to do master swimming, I would be voraciously hungry by the time I got out of the pool, rinsed off, changed into my clothes, and got in my car. I needed food. So I always had potatoes with me. You know, when I am doing weight training at home, and the way that I do it, I do 2 full sets and I do it very quickly so I can do it within half an hour because I'm moving really quickly, doing what I'm doing, lifting with heavier weights. I actually do break a sweat, but I'm not usually prone to being as hungry initially, but within, like, I know about an hour or so, yeah, I better have food with me. So you are, I mean, every time that you're more productive physically or even mentally, I mean, how many people, when you went to school or college and you're studying, you don't want to eat while you're studying, but you will get hungry because you're utilizing so much brain power. So again, you always want to eat when you're hungry, stop when you're satiated, repeat as necessary. So there are certain exercises that are going to make you hungrier and workouts than others. And that's okay. You just want to always go by what your hunger drive is telling you to do.
Awesome. Beth, who you know, says, since reaching my goal weight, I've experimented with higher calorie density foods like breads, nuts, dry cereal, and it just doesn't work for me. The scale drifts up quickly. Maybe those foods work for people younger and or more active than I am.
Maybe. Or maybe, Beth, you get a little too excited. Like sometimes people get really excited. And it's like, oh my God, guacamole? Haven't had it in like 6 months. And it's a new flavor and you will eat a ton of it. And of course, you're going to gain weight when you do it. What I find interesting, because I know Beth so well, and I'm not saying this to Beth personally, but Beth, with some of my other patients, what I have found is that when they're going to divulge into higher calorie dense foods, it's not like they have some bread and then that's it. It's like they have a lot of bread and then in 2 days from now they have nuts and then they have some dried cereal that started creeping back in, and they're doing all of this at once. So for like you, Beth, if you wanted avocado toast, it's you knock yourself out on Sunday. Tell me how it is. But you're going to probably weigh yourself the morning of and weigh yourself the next day so you get a general idea. If I have avocado toast, 2 pieces, I'm going to weigh maybe a pound more. Maybe you get a get out of jail for free card and you're only up 3 ounces, but you start getting a general idea. If you take that and you run with it, and now you're having avocado toast every other day, your weight is going to go up very quickly. So again, it's kind of picking and choosing, like, hey, what do I want? If I want some nuts, start thinking about, well, what have I been eating lately? If I know that I'm going to go somewhere or I'm going to have people over and I'm going to make something higher calorie density, then for, probably a week or two before, I just make sure I have more soups on hand, because that and potatoes, because that's what I use to lose my weight on. And originally it became comfort foods, but to this day, if I know I'm going to have a fat calorie bomb of a meal and I know I'm going to gain a few pounds from it, then I just want to make sure that I am either at my same point or maybe I go a pound or two down, so that when I have that calorie fat bomb of a meal, I'm not stressed out. I know going into it, I'm going to gain weight. If I had Planters peanuts, dry roasted, lightly salted in my house, I would probably gain 10 pounds within a month. And I have very small hands. My daughter's hands are almost as big as mine. And I would only have a handful maybe once a week, but I don't have nuts. So when I have nuts, I just know it's a major fat calorie bomb. So if I'm having nuts and then I had tofu in my stir fry last night and maybe I, decided to make an Alfredo sauce, which is a fat calorie bomb. Like if you're doing that more so in a smaller increment of time, then you're really going to see it go up. Whereas it might go up, get it back down. Okay, fine. Now you want a bowl of cornflakes? Knock yourself out. So that's the way of kind of maintenance land. It's like you can still indulge and enjoy things here and there, but if the things here and there are adding up and they are, within days of each other, weeks of each other, that's where you're going to see it on the scale faster.
Awesome. So we have, okay, well, let's do this one first. Chris is saying, is seitan good to have? Or maybe another way of putting it is, what is seitan's place in the starch solution?
Seitan, what is it in the starch solution? I've never given it much thought because I hate it. I'm going to be honest with you. I am not a fan of it. I've had many great chefs tell me that they are going to make me their version of seitan and I'm going to love it. No, I don't love it at all. So because I don't love it, I don't think about it at all. That said, it kind of would go, I think, along the lines of tempeh. So what's it in calorie dense mode? I don't know. I would have to literally call Jeff Novick right now or text him and ask him.
It would be, my guess is it's going to be much more calorie dense because tempeh is made with whole soybeans. And while soybeans are higher in fat, seitan can be made one of two ways. One is that you get vital wheat gluten, which is a flour that's derived from flour. The other way is to take flour, whole wheat flour, and rinse it until only the gluten remains. Either way, you're coming out with the same thing. They both start with wheat flour.
And you just answered the question for them, Kathy. You are so smart. So if it's flour, then that's going to be a higher calorie dense item big time. So if you're trying to lose weight, not the best for you to have. But if it's something that you absolutely love, maybe if you had it once every 2 months, is it going to make it or break it in your health goals? It probably won't. Unless when you sit down and you take a bite, you eat all of it in front of you, then maybe it would, but it's just a flour product, and if we want to look at calorie density, bread's around 1,200 to 1,400 calories per pound, depending on how it's made, what's in it. And then when you look at, more of like your dried crackers, dried flour products, they start at about 1,700 calories per pound and go up. So, how dry is it? Because remember, every time that you extrapolate the water out of something, calorie density rises.
Yeah, and in that way, it may be halfway to pasta, just because usually what you're doing is you're taking this thing that you make and then you're cooking it in broth, but then also then something else is done, but it still would be more calorie dense than pasta for sure.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I think seitan comes up for a couple of different reasons. One is because it's a really great meat substitute. So like if I have people over, I might do some things with that. I have a couple of recipes, but I can't eat it anymore because I actually have a bad reaction. Another thing, which is, actually before that, I remember hearing Dr. McDougall not being a fan of it on one of the lives. So when asked about seitan, and he just really was not, it's very protein dense. So basically it's the protein from wheat is what's left. And it started being used by Buddhist monks thousands of years ago in China, which is a very different situation than we're in here now. But one of the reasons it's coming up now, first, it was a cool thing to do during the pandemic when people couldn't go to the grocery store. They would take their wheat flour and make chicken out of it, and it became repopularized. But also now, with all the talk of protein needs in older people in the whole food plant-based community. So there is another vlogger who is whole food plant-based who used to do extensively the Starch solution, who's still close, but he's working out a lot. The plant-based dads, Joey from the plant-based dads, eats a lot of seitan because of its high protein. He's working with a trainer and a different thing. He's not doing the Starch solution. He's very clear in delineating that as well for anyone who's watching. So if you watch one of his Starch solution videos, then you come on one of these others, make sure you watch what's in between. But I talked to Stacy about this too, because it's a big talk right now in the whole food plant-based community, because, Brenda Davis has a book on it about, you need more protein as you get older. There's maybe 3 or 4 people that are being much more vocal about protein, and sometimes even making the statement that maybe you're not losing the weight after a certain age because of protein. So I'm going to let you air out all of your opinions about that, if that's okay.
Honestly, I don't have an opinion of that. That would be, to be quite honest with you, that is a phone call, text message from me to Jeff Novick saying, hey, tell me about this. I am not always on the bandwagon just because there's a new book out. A lot of people are always on that bandwagon. Oh, it's new. Got to read it. What's going on? Because a lot of times, if you look over history, especially with, medications and whatnot, to give you an example, when I was 18, I started in pharmacy and I was a clerk. And at that time, beta-carotene was a huge thing. And oh my God, everybody wants beta-carotene. Got to have your beta-carotene. Do you have beta-carotene? And then they found out, oh, wow, too much gives you cancer. Oops, we shouldn't have done that. And then it was vitamin E. And oh my God, it's vitamin E and vitamin E. And we gave out vitamin E in copious amounts at the hospital that used to make me cringe. And now we found out we shouldn't have been giving vitamin E out. Well, now we're on vitamin D, and so to me, it's like there's always a recycling, a resurgence of an old discussion or conversation, and somehow it gets like dressed up in a new way by a different fashion designer, and now it's presented in a slightly different way. But if you looked at sometimes some of the actual like really deep details, it becomes the same story. It's just a little bit convoluted. So with things like that, I really do not give it my attention. And I have to say, I am very spoiled because I do have Jeff Novick as such a close personal friend. He is amazing. He's the reason that other people have their opinions, because they go to Jeff to find out what his opinion is. But he's amazing at the research. Just yesterday, he sent me another fantastic study. This man, that's all he does is he reads the research. He sees who funds the research. And then whatever that they footnoted, he'll go in and read the footnoted of the research. So for me, if I really, that's who I would ask. And I'm ignorant if I were to answer it really any other way, because I do not have an opinion of it. I just think that I work for the McDougalls. I know what we have been teaching people works. I've seen it on myself. I've seen it with all of our patients that actually do it. I think that, when you're going into working out, gym mentality, it's all about the protein. Honestly, that's all you ever hear, where you get your protein from. And protein builds muscles. Yeah, protein builds muscles, and it also contributes to IgG1F factors, which can turn on your cancer cells. But I guess if you want really big muscles, you're not really thinking about cancer at the moment. So to me, this is like a conversation that literally we could break off into like 10 different conversations. So I'm sorry I did not answer that probably satisfactory enough, but I am never going to BS anybody.
No, and that's fine too. It's one of the things. I have some friends too. They're just so tired of hearing protein. Like
Yeah.
even if you were a vegetarian in 1983, it was like, where are you getting your protein? And now it's like everybody's like quadrupling down, and it's just kind of a shock sometimes. And again, kind of going back to what I said earlier,
Right.
if you're listening to different sources, which of course we should listen, but we have to filter, right, or decide what's important and what we want to really act on. But it seems like right now what I hear a lot of is protein and the vegan community, or well,
Well,
whole food plant-based
absolutely.
community.
Well, and then there's difference. Calling yourself vegan isn't necessarily calling yourself plant-based. You could have Coca-Cola, you could eat Oreos, you can have oil, you can have all the fake meats, cheeses, and butters. That's all vegan. Nobody said vegan was healthy, but then, more of that plant-based community, that's more about not having as much of the processed stuff, of actually having whole grains, whole foods, getting your fruits and veggies in. And I think that protein is just one of those topics that everybody has an opinion on, and depending on whose bandwagon you want to jump on and who you want to believe. But from my days at university, I am a highly thorough researcher, and I don't believe or trust anybody until I have basically bled out my eyes and reading research to come up with my own opinion versus hearing somebody else say something and taking their opinion as fact. So, and I think that that's something that I wish that as a society that it would go back into more critical thinking skills and do that, than just because this person said this, which we see a lot in different advertisements. Oh my God, I now have to go and buy that product. Or, oh, if they said this, and that must be right. So it's not to say that that's not true. I mean, a great example would be Jenny McCarthy was on Oprah, oh gosh, what, decades ago, and she was talking about how dairy was linked to autism. And it was funny because I had that conversation with somebody, oh, I don't know, 7 years prior, and they told me I was full of it. And the reason why this particular example always comes back to me was because Jenny McCarthy was on Oprah because she said it. Now it's fact. So, instead of just always taking what you hear or what you read as fact or, face value, really thinking about, oh, well, where does that come from? For yourself, go a little further with it, and come to your own conclusions.
Sorry about that. We were having the discussion of, do we have enough rice
For
to warm
lunch.
up for both of us?
I've got some great Brussels sprouts. I've been like all in on the rice and Brussels sprouts since I made it on Saturday, and I have more shredded ready to cook. What let's just one person was saying too, my concern is I'm 68 and wondering about protein in grams, and what I would say to you, Pamela, is Stacy gave us you could probably look it up on Google. There's something about your weight in kilograms. We did some little thing to see how much protein you should have. You could also ask your doctor about that to help you, or find a calculator that works for you. And that's about all I can say. So,
If you're eating a lot of
Make
beans
a
and stuff.
Make a consultation with Dr. Lim and ask Dr. Lim, the medical director of the McDougall program, what he thinks, and ask him why. And if you come to a McDougall program, then you can ask Jeff Novick. So because the problem with doctors is doctors are already kind of, some of them are swayed by who they trained under, what's taught in medical school, what is not taught in medical school. We are seeing a lot more of lifestyle physicians out there. But that said, there are also a lot of lifestyle physicians out there that don't even know who Dr. McDougall was. So it's kind of like, when you're looking at right now, I mean, not just Dr. McDougall, but I'm also like Dr. Ornish. I mean, Dr. Ornish has been around forever, but it's kind of, you never know what somebody's background is unless you ask them. And with protein, well, where are you getting it from? Are you getting it from like, the national like council from our government? Because if you are, then who is funding that? And if I remember correctly, there's a lot of funding coming from the meat industry and other industries that have a stake on making you think or need to know that you need protein because your dollar is going to go and buy their products. In the end, it's the almighty dollar. Unfortunately, it's amazing. And I think it was Dr. T. Colin Campbell, if I remember correctly, when they were figuring out the different dietary guidelines, and he was on, I think it was him that was on the council. Like, it wasn't until many, many years later where he talks about where they came up with that number. And Jeff Novick talks about it in one of his lectures, actually, of what the recommendations should be, and what they should have been is much lower than what they came out to state what the recommendation was, because they didn't think that the public could do it or would do it. So again, it's just really knowing the background of what it is.
No, that makes complete sense. So Ocean is saying she's new, or they're new. I don't know if it's a she or not. Ocean is genderless as far as I know. I'm new to the Starch solution, so my apologies if I misgendered anyone. I'm wondering what Mary's Mini is and what it's for.
Okay, so under the McDougall program, there is no animal products, eat lots of starches, eat your fruits and veggies, no oil, and no fake vegan products, because the fake meats, cheeses, and butters out there are actually worse for you than the animal products. Then there is maximum weight loss. Okay, and maximum weight loss is for people that I wouldn't recommend it, honestly, to the people that first come and want to change their diet, because you should get used to just eating this way first. But for somebody that's been doing this for a while and they're really within the last 5 to 20 pounds of needing to lose weight, man, there's like a 10-point checklist. And it's, you want to make sure you're only drinking water. And Beth can tell you, I know Beth, I think, knows it really well. And Jeff Novick has a really great article on the McDougall website, so drmcdougall.com. If you search up like 10-point maximum weight loss checklist, not to have flour products, like it really goes into detail. So what Mary's Mini, it's kind of evolved over the years. Originally, it was for somebody that if you fell off the wagon and you basically jumped off the cliffs of Gibraltar and you're trying to get back, it was a very simplistic way of getting back into McDougall, which is you pick one starch and you eat it for 10-ish days, about 10 days. And so you would pick either potatoes or sweet potatoes or rice or quinoa or oatmeal. And then you would have all the vegetables you want. And then you would have, originally it was one fruit, then it was no fruit. And then it kind of went back to, hey, if you need fruit, and then, just try to limit it to as least as you can for this time. And it just really cuts back your taste buds and it brings you back to center. I know Dr. Doug Lisle, he even talks about doing watermelon fast. Do a watermelon fast for like, I think 1 to 3 days, because it brings your taste buds back into center, and not drinking watermelon juice, but actually eating watermelon. However, if you do that, please stay home. Don't overtax yourself. It's not a time to start a new exercise routine. You really need to be mindful of your energy levels. So that's originally what it's for. Now, with my patients, I don't really get into that as much, because if I have a patient that can be that monotonous, that might be an easier thing for them to do. But I find that some of my patients, actually going by the principles of maximum weight loss, are easier because you have a little more variety.
Yeah, and Mary's Mini can be confusing. So, like, one of the things that we did last year is everybody in Kathy's Cooking Club, they're like, let's do a Mary's Mini. I'm like, okay, so we'll do a sort of Mary's Mini, because I let everybody pick. I put all the information out, all the links to the McDougall site, but people would search and go, you can't have fruit, you can't have fruit, and all this like weird stuff was happening, which is when I said, as a group, we will never do this again. I will call it something else, just because, you know, one of the things, since Dr. McDougall's been around for so long, when you look at some of these little things, you may see some conflicting information.
Yeah.
And look to the dates and what's the most recent is what I would say. We do it a lot of times, but then what I ended up doing with the group was kind of letting them, because I'm not in charge of people. They can have whatever they want to eat. But people were like, oh my God, I miss oatmeal. And I'm like, you know, you don't have to do the Mary's Mini. And with Stacy, I remember talking to her before I went into the program, like, should I do maximum weight loss or Mary's Mini during the program? She's like, how about we just start with the basics? Yeah. So, Ocean, since you said you're new, I would even encourage you to not get into the minutia of that. One of the reasons it was brought up to me too that you might do Mary's Mini is just to make your life simple. You're doing something for 12 days. Now you know you're eating potatoes all of those days, or you're eating rice all of those days. But everybody who says to me, or not everyone, many of the people who say, oh, I think I want to do a Mary's Mini. And I'm like, oh, okay. You know, are you thinking of eating potatoes for this many days? Every meal. What do you mean every meal?
And then it glasses over.
And they're like, right? That doesn't sound delightful. I'm like, yeah, it's not. It's not supposed to be delightful. And it's not that many people can do it and enjoy it too. There's sometimes that literally I will go 4 or 5 days and I eat sweet potatoes, or we eat potatoes. So I just kind of want to put that out there too. Like, I think a lot of times when you're starting to get information about the starch solution, you think, what's the best way for me to do this? And I personally, what I would say, and is the easiest way, let's do it the easiest way. Let's not start, like, I'm going to start riding my bike again. I haven't rode it in years. I have to do things very basic. I'm going to walk around with my bike. I'm going to see how this new bike feels, right? I'm going to make it easy. Or I could just go out, scare myself, and not get on a bike again for 5 more years. So it's easy to eat potatoes and vegetables, or starch and vegetables, or even just starch. Have oatmeal in the morning, have a soup and a baked potato, or a stew, or beans and rice. Those are all so easy.
And it is. And that's the nice thing about the Mary's Mini is that, you know, if you do it for real, you're not switching out your starch. It is one starch. But the principle of Mary's Mini is a broader concept of the McDougall program, which is have a starch, have your vegetables, you know, and then there's the conversation of fruit. Fruit really depends on who you are talking to, because this is a topic that has been always, you know, kind of ever changing. So, for example, on the McDougall program, you may eat fruit. End of discussion. Now, on maximum weight loss, if you were doing that, they would limit it to about 2 to 3 fruits a day. Why? Because people can overeat on fruit very easily, especially when you are tightening up what you are eating on a day-to-day basis. Fruit is like the sweet sugar bomb that is amazing. And that's why it's easy for people to overindulge on it. And then Mary's Mini, that went between, you know, have one fruit, have no fruit, or one or none. But then there's the realm of calorie density. And Jeff Novick and I had a discussion of this many years ago. And the thing is that when you look at calorie density, the lowest calorie dense items you're going to find are fruits and vegetables. And they range between 100 to 300 calories per pound. Now, if you have vegetables, yes, they are lower than fruit. However, if you're eating crudité with a bunch of hummus that has tahini in it, you've kind of jumped over fruit. You are now higher in calorie density because of the hummus with tahini, even if it doesn't have added oil. And now fruit is lower in calorie density. Fruit can, if you eat it in copious amounts, raise your triglycerides. It can even stall weight loss in copious amounts. But overall, it's still healthy. So sometimes even like the stories within, within like the same place, like you could look at it in different realms. So I think that the most important thing with the starch solution is just eat this way. If you want to lose weight, avoid the higher fats, no nuts, no seeds, no avocados. Don't eat tofu right out of the container. I mean, save it for once in a while, having it in a nice stir fry with rice and beautiful vegetables and maybe some mushrooms, something like that, more as a condiment. And just staying away from more of the processed foods, because it's the processed foods that are so easy for us to go to versus going to just peel potatoes, chunk them up and steam them. And now I got a ton of potatoes for not only this moment, but now for the next 3 days.
Right. And like one thing Beth is saying too, it's way easier for me to just skip higher calorie density foods nearly always. I like it to be easy. And I like the starch solution because it is easy. I think it's accessible. You can do it on a budget. If you are not an incredibly wealthy person, you don't have to go out and spend money on mixes and powders and potions and things like that, right? You can go to Walmart. You can get rice. You can get beans. You can get some frozen vegetables. You can get cans of beans if you don't feel like cooking them dry, or if you don't have, maybe you have chronic fatigue syndrome or something else and you can't always have the energy to cook. But like one of the things that I love to do is take a can of beans and turn it into something magic. And I have a red beans and rice recipe. It's just spices. So if you have no energy, you use the aquafaba in the can and you smush up some of the beans. It looks just like the red beans that have fat in it. No fat. There's no fat, all flavor. And it takes like, the first time it might take you 10 or 15 minutes. You've got the rice in the rice cooker. There you go. And then you have meals for a few days, like potatoes. Prepping potatoes and just cooking a bunch in, so you just have them when you're ready. And that's one of the things I cannot say enough positive about, is I feel like it is just so accessible for people of different incomes, of people in different levels of ables, or even energy levels. And that's when like also a lot of times during the winter, people have seasonal affective disorder that makes it even a little harder. But don't forget, you can take a couple of cans of beans, a can of corn, and a can of tomatoes and some chili powder, and that will hit the spot. So it's not that you also can't go get Rancho Gordo heirloom beans and cook those up and take the frozen corn that you grew in your garden that the Princess Possum slept on at night, with the spices that you got when you were in Morocco or something. It can be anywhere in between where, and I think that that's what's so powerful about the program, is that you really, it really can meet you where you are. I find it's even easier than the ones that tell you to eat X amount of vegetables or to have such a varied diet, because depending on where you live, if you live in California, some of those things are going to be available fresh and local all year round. But if you're in Minnesota, it's going to cost a lot of money.
Exactly. Yeah. And it doesn't need to be rocket science. I mean, anybody that's a lower socioeconomic, if you price out vegetables and fruit, and I'm not even talking organic, I'm talking just regular, it'll blow their budget. But they can definitely have sweet potatoes, rice, regular potatoes. I mean, all of those starches are so cheap. And it's lovely that we have places like Costco and other stores that have them in bulk. And also, I don't know if everybody knows this, but most of the time, because, I'm sure somebody will prove me wrong on this one. If you go to a store that you patron and you see that they have a bulk area, you can always ask their buyer if they will buy you certain things in bulk. And usually when they do, they give you at least a 10% discount. So then you're saving even more money. So if you haven't done that, get to know your produce people and your buyers in your local grocery store.
No, that's a great idea. I know a lot of people use Azor, so you kind of cut out the middleman of Whole Foods used to do bulk discounts, or if you bought a case, and since Whole Foods bought them, they don't do that anymore.
Amazon. You said Whole Foods bought them.
Oh,
Amazon.
Amazon bought Whole Foods. They're one now. They're all married up. And one of the things to think about too is I love that you mentioned Costco. Costco is a big go-to for me. It's also close, but I always try to look at Sam's Club and BJ's, and they always have different things. And so, no, that's not true. There was one thing that I had saw. Sometimes they'll have certain things that are really helpful. Like you guys have the Mikasa tortillas. Ours does not have that. So some of it is going to be super local. And sometimes even if you drive an hour from your house to the nearest city, it will be different than what you have at yours.
Yeah. So they have different stuff. Like we live in Durham, but if we drive 25 minutes to Apex, like they have completely different things there than what ours has. And if something was at ours that we liked and now it's gone and it doesn't seem to be coming back, if we go there or to Cary, it's there. Right? So it's like,
Yeah, and it can be, like, for me, it's fun. Like, I'm someone who likes to go and find the bargain and tell you guys. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons I do what I do, is because I'm like, don't buy this here, buy it here right now. But
oh, see, now that's great. Like, I've only been into Costco literally a handful of times in my life. And the very first time I went into Costco, I was in my 30s, and I remember calling my older brother and being in absolute horrific shock. And things I remember, how big mayonnaise jars were. Like, it wasn't like this. It wasn't like this. Like, it was like you're buying for restaurants. And I literally thought, hey, look, I get it. If you have 15 kids, I get that. I do. But most people don't. Why do we have this? And I literally went through the whole Costco, like, oh my God. And he was in hysterics the whole time. He was like, I'm glad you crawled under your rock. Welcome. And so I actually don't go to Costco. I order online. And, sometimes they run out of certain stuff. Like, I have my favorite jasmine rice in a 25-pound bag, and I know that if I'm starting to get a kind of low, like a little under halfway, I kind of like peruse it, like, okay, they still have it, because sometimes they don't, but it does come back, and I like knowing that I can buy frozen broccoli from them, and their frozen section changes. So, it's kind of an ebb or flow to that when you're ordering online. But for those people that if you go to a store and you literally saw Costco when they have Oreos and you lose it and you just kind of buy them, then ordering online is for you, because you can sit in front of your computer, you have a list, go by the list. It's like if you scuba dive, plan your dive your plan. It's plan what you're ordering, that's what you do. You're out of there, and then it's delivered, or you could go and pick it up. They'll bring it to your car, and then you don't have any temptations at all.
What's funny is I do the opposite, but I also use it as exercise. So I walk every step in Costco. And also just so I can see what's new, is this something I need to tell people about, blah, 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 blah. But we also don't bring home.
We don't bring home extra food from there. We never bring home extra food. Now, extra appliances and
that's another good reason to go to Costco, because Costco's, and so like anyone who doesn't have a Vitamix yet that's looking to get one, or
on sale right
or a
now.
Ninja Creamy,
Are
or
they?
yeah,
Oh yeah, Vitamix. Like I'm thinking of buying another one or getting another top piece. I love my Vitamix. It is probably one of the most used items in my kitchen.
they're really great. And one of the reasons I say to buy it at Costco is because Costco has the best home small appliance warranty, and actually with almost anything except for like computer electronics and TVs. They'll take it back anytime. So I have bought my original Vitamix from them. 7 or 8 years later, it was starting to get a little hitch in the motor. It wasn't even dead. And they're like, sure, here's a gift card for all the money you paid. I didn't even have the receipt. They looked it up in my account from an account I had previously. Like they did all the work. And then I went back in the aisle. I took that card. I got another Vitamix and spent $20 to get the new one. So like, they are amazing with that. And so that's also why I encourage people, if you're getting a Ninja Creamy, to get it there, because those, for other people, have broken. I've not broken mine, and I don't know how. I've even sort of tried to. But like I do things I wouldn't tell you to do in it. But that way, if something breaks, they'll take it back. You'll get your money back. And it's kind of a real zero risk. People, I think they still do, but they used to bring their Christmas trees back in January, and they would give them money back.
I don't think they do that anymore.
I hope they don't,
No,
because
I don't think they
that's
do that anymore.
rude. But like, I have been tempted, because they have the Vitamix right now where it has the auto detect, and I have the old fashioned Vitamix, and I'm like, because that one holds things like the food processor and stuff like that.
Well, your birthday's coming up.
So I'm curious. We'll see what happens. But that's one of the reasons I like to go there too. And they will also mark things down incredibly. So like the Beast blender, which is my small blender that I use, which is almost as powerful a motor as the Vitamix, and they have small containers. Those got marked down from $200 to $80 last year. Yeah, so, but don't worry, I'll be telling you about stuff like that, because I am the kitchen appliance whisperer, and it brings me great joy to get you things like that on sale. I don't know why, but it does. Okay, Apple is saying my autistic brain loves Mary's Mini, and I can eat that way for weeks, sometimes months. I find it very peaceful, and that's my personal experience, and I like that too. Like I said, so like literally for 3 days going into 4 days, I have almost exclusively eaten steamed rice and my Brussels sprout cabbage, my smoky Brussels sprout saute. And I'm so into it, and I'm going to eat it all week because I just want it. It's perfect. And I'm feeling that rice groove right now. But you know what? I also, in 3 weeks, I might be feeling that sweet potato groove and get into that. It's sometimes, I think for me, I don't know about everybody else, when I say I'm only going to eat X for X amount of days, that makes me sometimes panicky. But if it just happens naturally, I'm totally cool with it.
I think we do so much better when we're like, when we go, well, let's not eat out any this week. And then we'll end up maybe only eating out once. Whereas sometimes if we say, okay, we're going to eat this buffet, and then we have one other time that we need to go, then we go out and do errands and stuff, and sometimes we get an extra in there or something like that, where it just seems like lately it's been more natural for us to just eat at home.
It is. And well, the class I just taught on Saturday was like easy starch solution meals. It was a double bonus. One, everybody wanted to know what to do, and then I just meal planned for the week, right? So I made like a mushroom beefless stew which it's really just potatoes, carrots, and mushrooms with spices, and it's delightful. It's so comforting. It snowed here.
And you made me like a lo mein with
A chickpea lo mein
chickpea pasta and some chickpeas in it.
with vegetables. What else did I make? I made, I don't know. I made 4 or 5 things, but anyhow, I made those Brussels sprouts. And I made jerk black beans. So I showed how you can take a can of beans, put some spices in it. Ta-da, gourmet meal.
Absolutely.
So, right? And those are all simple. And you don't even have to go to my class to know how to do that. You can steam some vegetables and put a spice blend you like on it. It can be that easy. Yep. Let's see if I have any. Beth said, one hurdle for me was letting go of a long history of diet mentality. Like weight loss is hard. So if it's simple and easy, it probably won't work. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's true. I mean, a lot of people, they've gone to Weight Watchers, and you have your point system, or the places where you measure your food, and then you have to go and you have to weigh in every week, and you are congratulated if you lose, and you're kind of shamed if you don't, and it's in a group setting, and I am not. This is why Stacy teaches the weight loss discussion group for our alumni. I am not always a fan of the group setting, because I have seen it in different modalities, and Stacy does an absolutely amazing job, and I'm sure every patient of hers will tell you how amazing she is. That said, I've also seen it where it becomes almost like a who's losing more weight, and it's like people are there to be together in this community, and yet in the deepest recesses of their mind, they're hating these people because they're doing so well, and they're self-sabotaging, and they're not being as honest with the group because they're not doing well. And for those people, a group setting can be a downward spiral very quickly, and it could even have much worse consequences. So that's why personally I like to work with people one-on-one. But then, you have, I call it fat girl mentality. Like, you've been overweight for so long, how can you ever actually lose it and sustain it? And that there's a lot of negativity there, and it's a stigma, and it's, it depends on the person. Sometimes you have to just kind of breathe through it, and with a lot of positive reinforcement and reminding yourself, hey, I'm doing something different. And I think that is the key word, different. I'm not doing a new weight loss program. I am actually doing a change in my lifestyle. I want my lifestyle to be healthier. Eating healthier is one aspect. Getting out a little exercise is another. Even going to a therapist, having some mental clarity, and really helping yourself out. Like, a healthy person has the whole package. It's not just this area or this area. And that's why anybody that has that type of stigma that is still with them, you definitely want to find somebody to talk it out. If obviously, Stacy and I, we deal with this a lot with our patients. But even if you haven't come through our program, finding a really good therapist out there, because it's done a lot of damage to people. I have heard great things about Overeaters Anonymous, and I have heard horrific. So it's always what works for who. One person doesn't always work for the other.
I totally agree with that. And after the 12-day program for us, Chef AJ, we joined in some of her groups because she invited us very kindly. And so I did see in both here in our chats and in those, and she does a little more restrict, kind of like maximum weight loss on steroids in her program. But I see a lot of people talking about how they did Weight Watchers for so long that they have trouble stopping counting calories. Like, I will be super honest and say, one of the other than it being inclusive, I don't have to count anything, because that's very difficult for me. It's hard. I'm not good at it. And since I make all my own food instead of buying it at the store, it takes a lot of time to enter in every recipe and how I made it different this time than last time and get the calories. So I don't really have much to say, but maybe you have a way of people who are still entering in these calories just out of habit, even though they're trying to eat more starch solution. Is there a way that can help, or a way of thinking about it?
Well, it's hard to break old habits, and so I repeat myself a lot, when they go, oh, well, I was weighing my food, what do you think about? And my answer right before they finish asking me the question is, I don't know, I don't weigh food. And what it is that I am trying to impose upon their psyche that I don't weigh food. I don't count calories. You don't have to weigh food. You don't have to count calories. You have been doing this now on and off for 30 years, and your weight is still the same pretty much, or you got bigger. Like, it is a very difficult idea for people to absolutely divorce themselves from old ideas and to do something brand new. It is no different than in my summation of anybody divorcing their spouse and then going on and being single and then going to a new relationship. You have your own baggage with you. And maybe if you did a lot of good work while you were single, you don't put that baggage in your new relationship. And this is what I see a lot of. And that is the one thing I try to remember or remind people all the time. You're doing something completely different. And you have to give it a good college try. And Beth will tell you, I always told her, if you honestly do what I tell you to do, and if you actually listen to me and you really do it, it will work. And it's a process. You're not going to trust that overnight or in a few weeks or even in the few months. Like, it takes a while. But now Beth has been doing this for so long, she doesn't even think about it. It is a new, really good habit of hers. And I find that with a lot of my patients, it's really that reinforcement of telling yourself, I am doing something brand new. I'm going to give it a good, honest try. When I first decided to change the way I ate to see if it actually did anything, I didn't go out and decide to exercise crazy. I literally only changed what I ate, and it was going to be a 6-month experiment because that was a true test. And I went one step further and thought, I'm not going to have desserts because they're just a bunch of fat and calories that I don't need anyway. And I need to retrain myself on how to just eat good food because I thought I was doing a good job. And from what this Dr. McDougall I'm reading from, nah, not so much. And that's all I did. If I had a glass of champagne, I didn't care. That's still McDougall. Bailey's Irish Cream isn't, but it's like I really was kind of loose with that because it's not like I'm drinking a ton every day, every other day, every week. It was like I really just need to break this down and make it as elementary as possible. And when I did that, and I stopped caring about, because I can tell you, I used to weigh myself obsessively. So I've been there. I've done that. Whenever I hear somebody tell me how much they weigh, it's like, oh yeah, I know. I trashed all my data like decades ago, but yeah, I know where you're at. I can actually relate. But it wasn't until my mind switched from weighing myself daily or this and that. It's like, no, I'm just going to concentrate about what I put in my mouth. That's what I became OCD on. What's going in my mouth? Did I make that? I didn't make that? What's in it? Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, well, I really need to know because I'm actually under doctor's orders or I have some allergies. You say one of those two things, especially the allergy, nobody wants anaphylactic shock on their hands. They'll tell you each ingredient that's in something. And if it wasn't McDougall, I didn't eat it. even if I wanted it, because my whole thought process when I was concentrating on what I put in my mouth is, number one, if I put it in my mouth, I have broken my own experiment. And that means tomorrow is day one versus this being like the second month, the third day. It's kind of like, oh, I've already committed. Like I'm going full throttle. But I also was really into seeing, does this really work? So this is why I can look everybody I know in the virtual eye and say, yeah, this really does. And yes, you could lower your numbers. And yes, you could have a very healthy life. How long will you live? I don't know. We've never said that you're going to live forever. And I honestly don't know if, I know people might think that, but you see somebody who's 120 years old or getting up there, um, they're not as mobile. I mean, hopefully they're sharp as a whip still, but they're not as mobile. And they've lost a lot of loved ones and friends. And getting higher up in those ages actually can be very depressing and hurtful. But I can tell you that you will be mobile and you won't have to worry about, I have to go to my doctor's appointment this month and I have 3 doctor's appointments this week and I'm on these medications and I have to go get a new medication because my doctor just changed it from this to that. Like when I hear people say this, like I literally think, oh my God, like that's so much time. That it's a lot of extra time, energy, and effort on bad health. So remember, Rome wasn't built in a day, and you're not going to change your thought process overnight. But with every day, you could actually turn back and tell yourself when you start having that idea of, I've got to weigh, or I've got to, count my calories, and you go, oh, wait, I'm not doing that. I'm doing something new. I'm going to try this. If you keep doing that every time that thought comes to you, you will, within the next 6 months, have a completely different thought process. But you have to work on it daily. It's no different than taking a college course and studying for 4 months in your semester before you take your final exam. You can do it. You can pass it with an A, but you're a different person 4 months later than when you first started looking at the instructor like a deer in headlights.
So 2 comments and then one last kind of question topic to wrap
Sure.
today up. So Beth is saying, I did exactly what Tiffany coached me to do and I lost 70 pounds. She is not kidding. And also our friend Elizabeth Markowitz, who's Stacy is her support specialist. I think you know Elizabeth as well.
I know. Yeah.
Okay, and hopes you're doing great, by the way. This program rocks. My whole life has changed. I couldn't be happier. Thank you, Tiffany, for all you do. So I wanted to put those in there too. The one topic, if you feel like we have time to do this, I know your day is really like micromanaged.
I can do it.
Okay, so there's 2 different people talking about hunger cues. So Claire was saying, I'll read both ways. I don't know if Tiffany's talked about hunger cues today. I know she has before. Please remind me how long these can take to return. Too much snacking and eating for non-hunger reasons.
Ooh, that's the red flag right there.
And can I?
Is not sport. This is not like going to play football. Okay, it's not about I'm eating to see how much I can eat because I'm going to win the game if I eat more. No. You want to eat when you're hungry, stop when you're satiated, repeat as necessary. When you have been overeating for a long time, or snacking is a part of your daily habit just because, especially, like I work from home, and I work in my kitchen, but if I eat, I am not at my computer. I'm very adamant about that. And when am I hungry? Well, let's see. I woke up at 3:08 this morning, and I've been up ever since. And I had a cup of coffee at about 5:30 in the morning, and I drank that for hours with water. And then I thought, oh, I want some tea, and I'm working as well. And finally, I realized at about 9:30, oh, I'm hungry. Yeah, I'm hungry. What do I got? Oh, I got rice, I got beans, and I got broccoli in the fridge. And right before I got on here, what did I do? I had some, and I put a bowl in, it wasn't filled to the very top, but I really only ate so much of it. And now I'm kind of feeling a little hungry again. So when I'm off, I'm probably going to have a few more bites. But in the process of learning about, are you hungry or not? You don't have to eat just because it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And if you're not sure if you're hungry, go without. Your hunger cues at some point will show up. They will. You might think, oh, I've been up for like 8 hours. Hey, sometimes I'm up for 12 hours. If I'm just in front of my computer, I am very work focused. Outside of if I got a call from, like my daughter's school saying, oh, she got sick, pick her up. It doesn't matter. I'm work focused. I'm not thinking about eating food right now. I might think about, oh, what am I going to cook everybody for dinner? Because dinner is really the only meal that we sit together to eat, because we are all generally hungry around the same time frame. And that is dinner. Sometimes my daughter comes home. She decided not to eat anything at school. She is starving Marvin. She eats immediately. There are other times where I'm hungrier more throughout the day. So I really do wait for my hunger cues. And when you start finally feeling them again, then it's like, oh yeah, that's hunger, because you don't want anything to dictate but your stomach if you're hungry. If you're in your head thinking, oh, I made that lasagna last night, that was so good. Yeah, I think I'm going to have some. That doesn't mean that you're hungry. It means that, hey, when you eat next, you're probably going to have the lasagna because it tasted really good and you can't wait to eat it again. But you really want to wait for that stomach. And there are times where I'm not sure. Am I really hungry? Am I? And I'll drink water. I drink some tea, because that helps me assess, am I hungry? If I'm drinking tea and I'm still like, yeah, I'm hungry. And when I say hungry, it's not hunger pains. It's almost like, trying to think. I can always talk about shavasana with satiation. I don't know how to really describe it. Like, I could feel it right now, so I'm trying to think. And it's like, well, when I had my daughter inside of me, it was kind of like if she was moving around, but it doesn't hurt. And it's not making me like jump around like I have to do something now. I mean, maybe that's it. I mean, that's kind of a really bad explanation. But it's like everybody's different too. The way that I'm starting to realize I'm getting hungry might be different for somebody else. But to me, it's about getting back to yourself and becoming cognizant of how your body responds and reacts when it's hungry, when it's satiated, when it's full, when it's stuffed. Because if you're stuffed, you have eaten way too much. And you shouldn't just snack in your house. I mean, commit to it. If you're hungry, then, have some soup, make yourself some potato, like kind of commit to at least having a couple of bites of real food. Because a lot of people get into a problem where they're snacking, but they're snacking off of rice cakes, and they've got, avocado toast, and they are, it's like they're eating little snacks, but they're higher calorie density, and it's working more against you than it is for you. Does that help?
I think it does. Like, one person, M, is also saying, if you want to, I think you clarified this pretty well, saying that she has a hard time recognizing when I'm truly hungry and when I'm full, and it's moaning. And I think that you kind of describing that physical sensation. I think a lot of people, I've been reading about a lot of people who maybe have ADHD or autism or other neurodiversity, often don't recognize those executive function things as well. And I can say, for me, trying to work on it, I notice, because I start feeling, it's like right before you start feeling lightheaded, when you start going, something's not quite right. Or sometimes I actually feel,
She'll say, I'm going to pass out if I
like
don't eat
I've
something.
never passed out in my life, so I don't know what it really feels like. But to me, because everything starts to get a little bit fuzzy and a little bit different, and And when I eat, I feel better. So even if you don't have that like mindset of this means what I feel, this is what I'm feeling hungry. And sometimes it can change for me at least. Like right now, I'm hungry too. So like it feels like I feel little things in my stomach, but I also start feeling just slightly lightheaded. Like I wouldn't
Yeah, I
want
don't
to
like that.
balance beam, right?
That is you waiting too long. And you do bring up a good point with those that are autistic and whatnot. Multiple sclerosis patients have the same thing, and I forget. There's a term that they have for it where they're not really sure when they're hungry or if they're going to overeat. So what I do with those patients is I say, okay, if you, I always ask, what is your schedule of when you eat? Do you have a schedule? And then it's like, okay, well, why don't you then, upon your first hour, hour and a half of waking, try to have a few like slices of apple and see where you go there. Because sometimes you have a few bites of something and then you go, oh, wow, I might be hungry. For people that really cannot, because of certain ailments, really detect it and it's really difficult for them, those are the only people that I say, okay, now let's see where we're going to go. Are you going to be a 2, 3, 4, 5 meal person a day? How much are we going to eat in one setting so that you're not overeating and you're not undereating? And that becomes a few, like a good 4 to 8 weeks worth of work of, hey, let's take notes. What's working? Did you find that you were like when you were hungry again, or when you ate, did you feel like eating? And that is very individual. You can do it, but that takes a little more work, and that's really good to do with somebody that can be there with you, because sometimes they're not realizing certain things because they're in their own head and body that somebody else on the outside can observe for them whilst taking notes along with them to go, hey, it's funny, 3 weeks ago, remember when we did this and you said you were fine and you lost weight and you had a lot of energy, but this week you decided to change it up a little bit. And sometimes it's changing up what they ate. Sometimes it's changing the frequency of what they ate, or something happened and they didn't eat at this time and they realized that they had super low energy. So that, I wish I could give you a straightforward, this is the answer. I can't. That's an answer that you can come to the answer as long as you're working with somebody closely.
And that is an answer. And here's one of the things I think that some people don't always include. I try to be as inclusive as I possibly can and learn
Right.
more and include more as I go. But I've noticed it myself, and like Apple actually evidently while I was saying it, and I think it's interoception is what it's called when you don't have that sense of things. And when I get super hyper focused, I lose that until I start feeling like a big change. Like you said, I probably have waited too long to eat. Probably a half an hour ago would have been the perfect time for me to eat. But I'm going to
Yeah.
eat as soon as we get off of here.
When you get focused, you don't think about eating at all. And I notice for me, when I'm focused on something, or I'm doing something, there'll be just this point where I don't know if my stomach will do a little twitch or what, but then my brain will say, you should probably eat something in a little bit.
You're right.
And then I may still keep doing what I'm doing and push it a little too far, but I still feel like there's a point where my brain knows what's going on, because then my brain says to me, you should probably eat something soon.
And
Yeah, what I find is really interesting that you say that is it reminds me of like when people are very into they're very much into talking about feelings and saying, we have to respect ourselves, we have to love ourselves no matter what happens. And then you say that, and it's like, that's like your inner adult telling you as a kid, yeah, you're kind of hungry. And like a child, if you wait too long, you will become hangry. When you finally eat, you will overeat because you're overcompensating, because now you're ravenously hungry. Don't go that route. Don't go down that road. It's a dead end. really take the other road, which is if you're doing something and you're kind of like, wow, I'm kind of hungry, then that's why I love having apples and carrots. If I'm not sure if I'm really, really hungry or kind of, I like that. Or if I have potatoes, I have a couple of bites. Just because I make a bowl of oatmeal doesn't mean I need to eat more than 3 bites of it. I could put that in the refrigerator because I have one. It's awesome. You should get one. But like, really, it's like we kind of forget that it's not that we have to commit to the whole plate of food that we're eating, but just get something in you. And then you could gauge, do I need more? Or, oh, I'm good right now. I'll probably be good for another hour. But don't go into that. I'm really, really hungry. If you had a child, like I have my kid, I know I pack her 3 things in her lunch at all times. She always has a Starch. She always has a fruit. And then the other one's like some type of vegetable thing or something a little different. And I know that most of the time she's not going to come home and have everything eaten. But my job as a parent is that on those 3 days out of the whole school year that she ended up being really hungry and she ate just about everything I gave her, then I could feel good about myself that she didn't go hungry at school. We forget to actually treat ourselves like that, like a child sometimes, and go, okay, I'm an adult, so we could do whatever we want, and we could not eat until we get lightheaded and we're so hungry. But that's not very healthy, and that's not what we would do as parents to our children. So that's how you want to treat yourself, is making sure that, hey, if you're going on an errand, it's not a lot of work to have a potato with you or just have an apple in the car. You don't have to eat it. You could bring it back in the house when you come home. But if you're out and about and you're kind of hungry, you don't have to stop anywhere or worry about, oh my God, I'm getting hungry. Am I going to get lightheaded? Can I make it home to eat? You got something right there.
Yes, and usually I prepare for it. Like I also often have bananas because like in the morning, if I'm doing something, I'll just grab a banana. I just ran out of bananas, or I would have eaten half, because that's something you can take a bite of real quick with nothing. Because in the past, when I wasn't doing well and I was snacking, like that's why I would eat tortilla chips, because I can eat them, I can be full, open, eat. So banana, I can open, eat, and it doesn't mean that's all I'm eating is a banana or 17 bananas a day, but if it normally before a live or something, if I knew we ran out of time to eat, I would eat something like that. Also, one of the things I do for us is like whenever I make something, I put our leftovers in a microwavable bowl that we can put in the microwave and then eat out of. So I try to take any of this other thinking out of it. So if she's hangry,
I can grab and heat, and then I'm good.
because I think that's one thing when you're really, really hungry, you're not thinking well. That's why we make bad choices. Like this is the point you make. I know what I'm eating, and it's in the fridge, and I'm going to microwave it, so I'm okay. But had I not had that in there, and I didn't know, I would be like looking around, like
Right.
an orange. I got to peel that and take all the white stuff off. It's just individual.
Whatever's going to take the least amount of resistance for you to get to it.
Right.
Yeah, and that's another reason to have cooked. In the summer, I have the little baby potatoes that you like too, and I just eat them cold out of the fridge. I'll eat sweet potatoes cold out of the fridge.
Yeah, I love that. I love sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes, if you roast them, it could be crack. It's just like candy. It's fantastic. I just glanced at Bev. You said that you grew up cleaning your plate. It's a hard habit to break. It is. And so if you're 74, that means you were born, I think, around 1950s. And if we think back to what your parents were like and your grandparents were like, and definitely your grandparents and great-grandparents, but your parents too, that was the era of the Great Depression, World War I, World War II. There's a reason why you cleaned your plate, because they didn't have food. And it is a very hard habit to break. So in that sense, I'd say if it's so hard for you to not clean your plate, then you want to put less food on your plate so you can still clean it, but you're just not overeating.
that is perfect. And I think it's a perfect note to end things on. And we really appreciate you coming in and helping us so much and explaining things in such great detail. I know that you have a crazy day, and please know how much you're appreciated.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Great questions. I always love coming. I'll be back next month. Yay.
Yep. Yay. Okay, guys, I'm going to go take care of myself and eat some food and heat up some food for Cheryl.
Yep.
So if you are not sure, maybe you should look and see if you're hungry too. Just check in, see what that feels like, see if you can feel it or not, right? And like Tiffany said, don't forget, if you're not sure, you can always take a couple of bites of carrot, a bite of something, and see how you feel and move on from there too, okay?
Yep.
But anyhow, I wish all of you guys safety, comfort, and the very best day. You have anything you want to say?
No, just take care of yourselves, and we'll see you later tonight, hopefully.
Yeah.
You'll
Oh,
stop by for the Positivity Circle with Sangeeta at
7
p.m.
Okay, 7 p.m. I don't know what time it is.
I think
haven't
it's
looked
7
at the
p.m.
Okay, let me look at the calendar.
Maybe 6 p.m.
What time is that?
Eastern time.
Eastern time. Thank you.
7 p.m. the Sangeeta Positivity Circle.
Yeah.
And basically we're just going to all come in and say positive things that have happened to us and try and get in that space and lift each other up. So, yeah. All right, you guys have the very best day and